constantly trying to learn new things just keeps your mind young. It keeps you going. When you
Yeah.
stop learning, you kind of just stagnate and drift away.
Regular Overdrive Radio listeners will recognize the voice at the top as that of longtime owner-operator Alan Kitzhaber of Eau Claire, Wisconsin, with his 1995 vintage aerodynamic Kenworth T600, every single mile of which he's put down the road himself since hopping into the truck as a company driver for Millis Transfer when it was brand new. Kitzhaber was Overdrive's Trucker of the Month back in August, when we told the tale of the Kenworth's journey toward crossing the 4 million mile threshold in the odometer back last May. Likewise, the story of Kitzhaber's long relationship with JR Truck Repair in nearby Chippewa Falls for a meticulous maintenance approach that has been a big part of the truck's longevity and ultimate efficiency. When we got our Trucker of the Year contenders together back late in November and early December for a final talk, when I asked Kitzhaber for his best single piece of advice for new and or aspiring truck owner-operators, drawing on his wealth of long experience, it got him to thinking. He had more than just a single piece of advice in the end. He set to work on a story that you can read today in 2 parts via the Overdrive Extra blog over on overdriveonline.com, published attendant to this podcast as well, where we've got some big news about Kitzhaber to share.
I'm certainly excited about it.
For 2024, in what, if current plans come to fruition, will turn out to be his final full year trucking as an independent owner-operator with authority, Alan Kitzhaber, with his Oak Ridge transport business, is Overdrive's Trucker of the Year.
I'm going to be retiring the end of March, beginning of April, somewhere in there, and I guess I can't think of a better way to wrap up a career than being Truck Driver of the Year. That's pretty exciting.
That's right. Judges ultimately lauded owner-operator Kitzhaber's meticulous approach to both maintenance and efficiency throughout the operation. Quote, "One of the best and most solid business plans I've ever heard another truck owner operate by," said one. And another, quote, "I'm not sure I've ever heard of an owner who so maximized the potential of a truck and who is still wringing every last drop out of it. Smart businessman. Really a monument to the craft of trucking as an owner-operator," end quote. Kitzhaber contracts directly in the distribution network of shipper Menards, with retail stores for building supplies and more throughout the Midwest. Menards transportation manager John Schmidley threw plenty in the way of praise Kitzhaber's way, too.
Oh, I think it's a great choice. Awesome. It's pretty exciting. Everyone up here at Menards is pretty excited for him. I think it goes to a well-deserved driver out there. He has a lot of respect for the industry, does his homework. I think it's going to a real good choice there.
John Schmidley sees one of the best in Kitzhaber and relies on him directly as a resource in their business, that's sure, in addition to offering him as an example to other owners in the company's big network of independents hauling freight for them.
We'll go to him with questions. I mean, he does his homework. He treats it like a business. So part of it, when he does his Excel spreadsheets and keeps track of his numbers, a simple thing is keeping track of his fuel mileage. He probably gets the best fuel mileage out there, and we just cover the Midwest, so it's, he's not going to save too much time. He can be a lot smarter and save time instead of by just going faster. So he found that sweet spot with his truck, and he watches that fuel, and if he has any problem, if it goes a little bit lower, that might throw a sign out there that he has an issue with his truck. But he maps it all out. He keeps track of the tire pressure, everything, does his regular maintenance. I mean, he spells it out pretty good. He'll keep an alternator in his truck, and he'll be at a truck stop, and he can do a quick fix on that himself and be on the road. He loves working with JR Truck there. It's kind of his personal mechanic, so they follow up with him. He follows up with them versus going into maybe a bigger dealership or something like that, and you get a team member. You don't get someone that's at JR that I really think they want him back next time.
When I talked to Schmidley, he was quite hopeful he could convince Alan Kitzhaber to stay in business on a part-time basis at the least, with a summer season uptick in transport needs, given the long-time dependability he's seen with Oak Ridge Transport. Yet when I put that notion to Kitzhaber, here's how he characterized his plans, given all he's put in place to enjoy his final years of life, building a house on a 40-plus acre piece of land purchased some years back and offering plenty in the way of recreational opportunity to the avid hunter, fisher, sometime taxidermist, and photographer and videographer.
The summer months those are the times of the year that I want to get out on my land and do work, and that driving would be a conflict, and I financially don't need to work. I put money away and invested, and I'm in a position where I just simply don't need to work unless I want to. And I do want to work, but I want to work on my land. I want to build a house out there, and there's just a number of other things that I want to do to enjoy my time out there. I just enjoy being out in the woods, in the wilderness, and the wildlife. Some of the things, besides building a house, I want to change the property in ways that will attract more wildlife. I like to hunt and fish. I like videotaping and photography of wildlife. And I just enjoy changing the environment to see what other kind of wildlife I can bring in. And, that's kind of my passion. Along with woodworking, I do a little taxidermy as a hobby. So all of those things will take up a great deal of my time. And that's what I want to focus on. That's where my passions are.
We certainly heard about Kitzhaber's diligence around retirement savings in the podcast last year. Likewise, the long history of efficiency building upgrades to and meticulous maintenance of his 4 million mile 1995 T600. I'd encourage any owner with a mind to learn from his experience to find links to those podcasts in the show notes for this one. Likewise, his 2-part Overdrive Extra story at overdriveonline.com. Today, we'll dive into a little more of just what makes him tick. That instinct you heard at the very top of the podcast.
Constantly trying to learn new things just keeps your mind young. It keeps you going. When you stop learning, you kind of just stagnate and drift away.
There he referenced a Henry Ford quote that he's got secured to his visor in the cab of the T600, as pictured in the cover image for the podcast. The quote is this: "Anyone who stops learning is old, whether at 20 or 80. Anyone who keeps learning stays young."
And I try to live by that.
Here's a big congrats to Overdrive Trucker of the Year, Alan Kitzhaber, from all of us at Overdrive. Likewise, Trucker of the Year sponsors Bostrom Seating. Here's to staying youthful, even into retirement. After the break, we'll dive into Kitzhaber's own relative youth. After his time in the military delivered some early learning experiences he would later put to use in business as a truck owner. Keep tuned.
Cold weather is coming. Will your diesel engine be ready? Protect it with Howe's Diesel Treat, the nation's top anti-gel solution. Say goodbye to gelled fuel, water buildup, and harmful deposits while enjoying smooth lubrication. And if the temps drop way below freezing, don't panic. Howe's Diesel Lifeline can rescue gelled fuel with no fuel mixing or filter replacement needed. Both products are guaranteed and warranty safe. Don't let winter bring your engine to a halt. Trust Howe's to keep you moving through the coldest weather.
Find more information about Overdrive Radio sponsor Howe's fuel treatments at HOWES, HowesProducts.com. Here's Trucker of the Year, Alan Kitzhaber, diving back into his early working life on the way to trucking.
Coming out of high school, I went into the Air Force. I did that for 4 years. The majority of that time was in Grand Forks, North Dakota. I got out after 4 years and looking for work. I had a friend, or actually it was my boss, one of my bosses when I was in the Air Force, who retired after he had 20 years in. He started in retail, managing a retail store in the shopping mall there in town in Grand Forks. And so I'd visit with him occasionally, and he knew I was getting out and I was looking for work. Didn't have anything specific in mind, but he says, "Well, I know that the Radio Shack store manager is looking for an assistant manager." And so I went and talked to him, got hired.
Okay.
So that was simple enough by itself. And I managed a store there. Well, I started off as, a manager trainee, then became a manager. And I think it was not a very long period of time, 2 or 3 months, something like that. They had 2 stores in town. And the store that I took over, the guy decided he just wanted to get out of the retail business and do something else. I did that for a couple of years, moved to Minneapolis. I was there for a couple of years there. Went to Iowa. I was there for a couple of years, then came back to Minneapolis. I was there for another couple of years, and then got a chance to move to Eau Claire and run the store there. And workplace politics resulted in me not having a job. You got to pay attention to the politics of the workplace.
Okay.
And I did not as well as I should have. And so it was it was one of those deals was, hey, we don't want you around anymore, but we want to hire you back, but we can't do it right now. So not a good situation. But then at that time I'm looking for work, and just I see advertisements for truck driving and see the country and earn a buck.
You fell victim to the recruiting ad, but it turned out okay. Anyway.
Yeah, I guess I did. And I figured, well, I'll do this for a couple of years and pay some bills, and then I'll get a real job. That was kind of my mindset. Well, that was 34 years ago.
Right.
And so here we are now. And then now the experience with Radio Shack, the thing that's unique about that company is that each store is run like a separate business all onto itself. You have a profit and loss statements and expense summaries. So you have to run it like a business, because you get paid based on the profits. You got a base salary, which is an hourly salary or an hourly wage, and then you got paid a bonus based on profitability of your store. So you needed to learn how to try and increase sales as much as you could, control expenses as best you could in order to increase profits as much as possible. And that mindset, I simply carried that over into truck driving, which is, it's just a business mindset. Is all it is. It's no different whether you got one truck or you're a Fortune 500 company. It's the same principle of running a business, you know.
Right. You were a company driver for quite some time, though.
7 years.
Right?
Yeah, I started in 91 and got into the truck that I'm in right now in 95.
Right.
And then in 98, which would be 7 years later, I bought the truck from them. And I've been driving it ever since. In 2010, I got my own authority.
Right.
But other than that, for the last, I guess, 27 years, I've been an owner-operator.
You recommend folks to get that experience on the road before they, in addition to learning as much about business as they possibly can, before they make that move into truck ownership. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that 7 years when you were a company driver, and how that set you up for later success, I suppose.
You just try and do your job as best you can, I guess. Try and be that driver that the company can rely on. One of the things that I did that helped a lot as far as determining whether or not becoming an owner operator was going to be the right thing to do was I bought a program at the time called TurboTax.
Right.
I guess that service is now online. I don't think you can actually buy the program anymore. Or as a company driver, making that move to being an owner operator, it's, I think, a lot easier to do if you do it with the same company, because you're familiar with the way that company does business. You're familiar with their customers, and it's a lot easier for you to calculate whether or not that's going to work for you. And I took the pay that I would get paid as an owner operator, and I went through and calculated out every single trip that I'd run the previous year to see exactly how much I would have got paid based on the new pay scale. And I plugged that into TurboTax. And
including estimates of all the expenses that you have to be,
including the estimate. And that is it. It's just an estimate. And I did that based on talking with other guys that were owner operators, because Millis Transfer had several owner operators there at the time. So there were plenty of people to talk to, as well as the maintenance director there that managed the shop there for Millis Transfer. So I did all of that and put that all together. And it was very helpful, because the land that I bought, I didn't buy that until after I became an owner operator. And most lending companies aren't going to lend money to somebody who just started the business. They want to see 2 or 3 years of successful profits within that business before they're going to give you any kind of a loan. Well, I explained to the loan officer that the job I'm going to be doing as a owner operator was no different than that as a company driver. And I showed her what the pay scale was and so forth. And I had this TurboTax report or simulated tax return that I printed out and showed her. And that was enough to convince her that I was a good risk, and she granted me the loan. So that's an example of, I guess, understanding and knowing your numbers as far as profit and loss goes. And a large part of being a Radio Shack store manager was learning about profit and loss and understanding how to put all that together, and running a spreadsheet, learning how to run a spreadsheet. That's something I learned when I was with them. And that helped immensely as far as building my own profit and loss statement. I can use that for comparing, if I want to make a change from one company to the other, it's really easy to have 2 columns there, the advantages of one versus the other. What part of the country do they run in? You're going to have to pay tolls. What are the scales going to be like? All those factors you can kind of put into a spreadsheet, and it makes the comparison a lot easier because it's all side by side.
Alan Kitzhaber would take inspiration in later years from the exposure he had to small trucking business guru Kevin Rutherford, and the pages of Overdrive even, to further refine expense and revenue tracking, a story he tells in part in the 2-part story he's authored for us in the Overdrive Extra blog, with a mind to getting new and aspiring owner-operators thinking about the processes that have been crucial to his success. He'd use those spreadsheet comparisons, too, in his comparison of different operations through the early part of the century, on his way to where he is today. 14 years now, contracted with his own authority, pulling freight for shipper Menards between distribution centers and stores in the Midwest. Before he moved on from Millis Transfer, though.
The economy went into the toilet in 2009, as most of us remember. And Millis Transfer was in the business of trying to create profit, and owner operators were the highest paid truck drivers they had, so they were eliminating them, and I was one of the casualties of that. And so then I went on another driver that used to be with them, who was actually a guy that he trained me when I started driving truck back in 91. He was working for Transport Design, so I called and talked to him and asked him, how he liked where he was at and so forth. So he talked to the recruiter there, or the personnel manager, whoever it was. And so I talked to him and got on, which was really quite fortunate because at that particular time, nobody was hiring at all. You make phone call after phone call and nobody was taking anybody on. And so I was fortunate to get on with them, and I stayed there for a couple of years. And then the opportunity, I just started searching for other opportunities. What else might I do for a living besides drive a truck? I was thinking about getting into truck sales because of my sales background, but I talked to a couple of guys on that, and the income potential at that time just wasn't very good because the market was just in the toilet. And so I kept looking, and then I found the opportunity with Menards, and they had, from what I understand, they had just recently changed or modified the way that they structured who was going to haul their freight. They weren't getting the delivery service that they were desiring to have. So they decided to go with one truck, one driver. You own your own truck. You have your own authority. You are your own trucking company. And they went to that particular program. And so far, this has been working out quite well for them because they haven't changed. That's the business model they're using at all their distribution centers.
And all those owners are dedicated in the system. Like they're fully doing that 100% of the time. You don't actually haul for anybody else, right?
I don't, and you could. That's an option. You certainly could. And there's some guys, maybe they do, but I don't know about it. I think most of them just work strictly for Menards and don't do anything outside of that. They've been able to keep me busy. It's been slow lately, but it's been
Yeah.
slow for a while because the housing market is kind of a little depressed right now.
Right.
But I've still been able to stay busy enough that I'm not going to complain.
Net profit for 2024 nonetheless hit six figures, even with the challenges he mentions. Likewise, an early year surgery that put him away from the truck for a few weeks. If you heard our prior podcast featuring Kitzhaber, though, you'll know he's concerned more with efficiency necessarily than the final profit number, as it were, focusing closely on the comparison between total expenses and profits.
The number that I pay the most attention to when I'm looking at my profit and loss statement is the percent of net income before taxes relative to total expenses. This year it's 48.593%, and I shoot for about 50%. So I'm pretty darn close right there.
One of the things that you got into in what you wrote for aspiring and or new owner operators is diet and exercise, and kind of a conscious decision that you made. You made the decision to begin a exercise routine that you've continued to this day with the goal of just putting yourself in a place to be able to actually do what you're doing now, just enjoy your retirement, get to build your house.
I just knew I needed to do something because I was getting pains in my shoulders, and just a lot of it has to do with just simply sitting on your butt holding a steering wheel for hours on end. You just don't get the kind of exercise that you might otherwise get. Even if somebody working in an office gets up and moves around a little bit more often than we do. I want to work on my land and do things out there. And the way I was feeling, it was like, is this is not working out. If I want to be able to continue to work on my land and do the things I enjoy doing, I need to do something.
Right.
And so I got on the internet and I did some Google searches, and I spent a lot of time on YouTube looking at different options as far as and I tell you what, there is a lot of information on YouTube. There's more people out there offering different exercise programs than you have time to watch. Some of them are better than others. And trying to figure out which one was going to be best for me was, that was the challenge. What can I do? And you'd have this guy come on and he'd say, you got to do this every day, or you got to do that every day. And that really wasn't real helpful for me. And I tried to gather, some common threads between all the different people that I was watching or listening to or reading about. I kind of started slowly, tried this exercise and that exercise and did different things. And then I ran across a guy named Steve Maxwell. He's a trainer. He had an exercise program, or I shouldn't say an exercise program. He owned a gym at one time. The guy's a champion jiu-jitsu wrestler, senior classification, I think it was. He's like 70, in his 70s right now. He lives in Washington, and he'd been in fitness his entire life. He was a wrestler when he was younger in high school, and I don't know if he was a wrestler in college or not, or if he even went to college. I don't recall that, but I know he was into wrestling, and then he got into Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He has a training program or a philosophy called the 5 Pillars of Human Movement. And it amounts to, you get the 5 movements, but it amounts to 7 exercises. You have a vertical push and pull, in other words, an overhead press or a pull-up. You have a horizontal push and pull, which would be a push-up or what some people call an Australian push-up or an inverted row, where you kind of lay on your back and pull yourself up. Then you have core, which would be generally your abdominals. You have hinge, which is like a deadlift, working that muscle group. And then you have squat. All of these exercises are what they call compound exercises, which work a varied amount of muscle groups. So it really simplified things to a great extent. And the other thing he had too, he has a bunch of videos that you can get from his website. The one on 5 Pillars of Human Movement is the one I would recommend. I've got a bunch of them. That'd be the one that I would start with if you're interested. He's also done a video on doing a hotel workout where you're stuck in a hotel room, where the guy traveled the world doing fitness training. And I says, well, God, that inspired me. This guy does stuff, and he does it all in this tiny little package that he has. He has all the stuff that he needs to do his workout in this little pouch that he carries with him. And it's not any bigger than a shaving pouch. I was inspired by that. And I said, well, wait a minute, maybe I can do something inside my truck. I can do it year round. Doesn't matter what the weather is, hot, cold, raining, snow, freezing. I can do it in my truck. It may not be as good a workout as you could get otherwise where you have more room to work, but it's better than nothing. And so I devised 7 exercises that would work for me, that would work those muscle groups. I've got the pull-up bar in my truck. I have some exercise tubes from GoFit, I think is the brand name. I was able to do all those exercises in my truck. I do the same exercises at home. In fact, I just did an exercise or a workout this morning before I got on to talk with you this morning.
That's cool. And do you do this every day?
No, I do it about twice a week. That's all that's necessary. You don't, and it takes about 20 minutes. At the same time I started the fitness program, I also paid a little bit more attention to my diet and health,
right,
as far as that goes. So it was kind of a combination of things. Not that I was grossly overweight or anything like that, but there was room for improvement. It's made a big, big difference in how I feel. I don't have those aches and pains in my joints anymore.
Right.
It makes a heck of a big difference. The mindset is I wanted to do functional fitness is the objective. I wasn't so concerned about training for some kind of athletic competition or anything like that. Just wanted to do enough that I could strengthen, my muscles in all areas of my body to the point where it was going to benefit me, where I wasn't going to get atrophy, which I think a lot of people end up suffering just by I see so many truck drivers have a hard time just getting in and out of their truck, when they start to get old. Right. The guys that are doing flatbed work and they're in and out of their truck every day, all day long, they probably are getting enough exercise that they may not need to do anything special. But there's an awful lot of people that I think developing some kind of an exercise program would help them a great deal.
Right.
And then the other thing, like doing push-ups, or doing, like, for core workout, I do a kind of a crunch sit-up kind of exercise, or what I did is I took a piece of plywood that is 6 feet long by 26 inches wide, and it was that size because that's the size of the exercise, or it's a yoga mat that I put on top of that. And then I wrap a strap around it, and I can stick my feet underneath of it, and I can do exercises that way, as far as crunches. And then the other exercise that I do for the hinge exercise, I stick my feet underneath it, or get on my knees, wrap that strap across my ankles, and then I lean forward and then back. And that posterior muscle chain gets worked really well there, especially on the lower back, which is an area that I feel that I need some attention to, because my lower back bothers me a little bit from time to time. And I think that's true for probably most people who drive truck. Common complaint. I think it's just a lot of inactivity. Now, when I had my prostate surgery, one of the things that I did is I walked every day. I'd walk 5 to 10 miles every day for almost the entire 2 months that I was, not initially I didn't walk very far for the first few days, but it wasn't too long, and I was walking 5 miles a day. And when I went back to work, my back felt great. No issues at all. I mean, it felt like it should. And I'm going, gosh, dang it. Should I retire now? I was really tempted to retire because I felt so much better. Now that I got back to work again, now my lower back is bothering me just a little bit. But the exercise that I've done, I've modified the exercise from what I was doing to what I am doing now, and that has helped. But the beauty about this whole program is you got 7 exercises to do. You pick one exercise that you can do, and everybody is at a different level of fitness and can do a certain amount. Like, for example, push-ups. If you've not, the first time I did a push-up, I hadn't done one since high school. It was painful. It was. I couldn't believe I hadn't tried one for 30, 40 years. It was actually painful because your muscles were just not accustomed to it. And
Right.
it'll take time if someone who is listening to this is going to do the same thing I did, it's going to take some time. It probably took, I would say, for some of those aches and pains to go away, it probably took close to 2 years. You just start out, and I'm at the point now where, you start out with a particular exercise like a push-up, and you can only do so many. You maybe can only do them from your knees to your hands. You might not be able to do them from your toes to your hands because you're not strong enough yet. So you have to kind of work your way up from whatever you can do now and just keep working and working and working. And you'll eventually get to a point where you just can't do anything more than what you're doing. You're getting it as difficult as what you can handle. And that's kind of where I'm at right now.
From there, as Kitzhaber suggests, you maintain as best you can, just as you would with your truck. Long term, you'll be in better health and better able to enjoy the fruits of your labor, which this Trucker of the Year is determined to do on that 40 acres worth of property in the years to come. Here's a big congrats to Kitzhaber for the win, and to all of our 10 semi-finalist Truckers of the Month last year. Keep tuned to OverdriveOnline.com for an opportunity to meet Alan Kitzhaber at the big Mid-America Trucking Show in Louisville in March, where we'll present him with the trophy for this year's award, a custom-designed replica of the 4 million mile T600. Who knows but that you could get an opportunity to see the real thing for yourself as well, with all of its efficiency-minded modifications. Find those past detailed looks at the truck I mentioned earlier and links in the show notes for the podcast. Likewise at overdriveonline.com/overdrive-radio. The Trucker of the Year Award is sponsored by Commercial Vehicle Group and Bostrom Seating, who share our vision for your success, no doubt. You can enter the 2025 program for a chance at bragging rights for the year, custom replica of your own truck, and plenty more in the way of prizes at overdriveonline.com/toptrucker. That's overdriveonline.com/toptrucker. Hope to see your name or that of another deserving owner you admire there. Congrats again to Alan Kitzhaber. Overdrive Radio is a production of Overdrive, the voice of the American trucker. It's edited and produced by me, Todd Dills, with the acoustic guitar and other support of trucker songwriter Long Haul Paul Marhofer. The theme is Legend of the Snake Man by Marhofer, featuring the guitar work of Travis, the Snake Man himself, Lamech, Terry Two Socks Richardson on bass, keys by Tishomingo Jim Whitehead, and on drums, Andrew Marshall. The podcast is backed up further by Overdrive's own social media coordinator Jasmine Campbell, news editor Matt Cole, executive editor Alex Lockey, and video editors Lawson Rudisell and Andrew Gwynn. We'll see you next time.